So I'll start letting people in,
Mhm.
and then I'll introduce Mayuri, and then we can take it forward. I think it's 4:01. We can start. So yeah, hello everyone. Good evening, and it's so nice to see some of the familiar faces coming in for all our huddles. And this is the 10th YI huddle. We have one more left, which is going to be on the 28th of March. But I'm very excited to be hosting this huddle today because, as the topic says, going full circle, I have also gone full circle, and we have. I'm meeting Sarah. I'm able to host Sarah, who is the first place from where I began my psychom journey. So I'm very excited to be listening to this huddle today. And we also have Arnab and Mayuri. So Mayuri is a faculty at HBCSE TIFR and has been closely associated with India Bioscience, also being one of these IOG awardees, and has been very focused in undergraduate research and science outreach across various capacities. So, hi Mayuri, and welcome to the 10th YI huddle of the series, which is titled as Going Full Circle: The How and Why of Public Engagement, Citizen Science and Outreach. And without further ado, I'll hand over the stage to Mayuri, and she can introduce the guests. So even though this is set up as a webinar, all the participants are free to have their audios, videos on, raise hands, and engage as in an interactive manner as possible. And so Mayuri, the stage is all yours.
Okay, thank you so much, India Bioscience and Arushik for having us. I'll get right into it. Welcome, everyone. We will get a very short introduction with our guests today. We have two guests, Sarah Haider Iqbal. She's a science communication and engagement strategist. Although she's trained as a PhD in biochemistry from Oxford, she's since then worked in many very good organizations like India Alliance, and she's currently a consultant at the non-profit foundation for advancing science and technology, FAST India. And Arnab wears many hats. He's a scientist at TIFR, of course, but he's also a science communicator and tinkerer. You probably know him as the guy who has pioneered, curates, and hosts Chai and Wai, which is a science cafe in Mumbai. But he's also very interested in frugal engineering. He's developed many low-cost experiments and STEM resources for school, college level, as well as solutions to global health issues like decontaminating N95 masks. So very excited to have you both on board. Welcome. We'll get started with Sarah today. Sarah, could you please share your insights on the current state of scientist-driven outreach in India? Where do we stand today in terms of how frequently and whether scientists do outreach?
Right. Thanks a lot, Mayuri, and really pleased to be back on the India Bioscience platform, and really excited to be in conversation with you and Arnab. I guess I don't have data to show or draw upon from whether this scientist-driven outreach in India has increased, decreased, or stayed the same. But I think I would say that scientists are doing outreach. The outreach that scientists are doing today has become more visible, and perhaps they are also, and I think perhaps they're appreciating outreach and science communication a lot more on average, I guess, compared to earlier times. I think social media and I think just generally the digitally connected environment we live in today has a lot to do with this visibility and appreciation. So I think I feel on average scientists are definitely viewing it more seriously, and I also saw this. When I was at DBT Wellcome Trust India Alliance, and I used to work very closely with our grantees and with the scientists in the larger biomedical and health research ecosystem, I definitely also saw an uptick in the interest in public engagement over the years I was at the organization. So I definitely think that things have, it's not just what we're seeing on social media, but I think we are seeing a real change. I also see a lot more systematic and formal efforts by scientists, particularly those who are working in areas where they're required to interface with non-science public, or their work has direct societal implications. And I think those sort of outreach efforts are becoming more and more common. And you would also see that, I guess, in the sort of grants that India Bioscience gives, or the grants that India Alliance gave, used to give. They would typically go to people who are working on problems that directly impact society. And I think even laboratory-based scientists, who may not necessarily interact with the public on a regular basis, are also quite actively contributing through initiatives organized by the institutions, or even taking up independent initiatives and efforts. So I guess, but for the sake of this discussion, I would like to place the scientists in three broad categories when it comes to science communication and outreach. And this is not by any means a perfect classification. I think the first category would include, scientists like Arnab, Mayuri, others who are self-driven, incredibly creative and passionate, and will do outreach with or without the institutional, compulsion or help, or even, a mandate from the funding body. So they enjoy it, they think it's important, so they do it. And I think this category definitely has seen an uptick, but it's still a much smaller category in terms of numbers. The second category, which I think is a much bigger category and also includes a lot of young scientists and the YIs probably today, who are interested. I mean, these are scientists who are interested in science outreach, but are not sure where and how to start, and are heavily relying on institutional support or incentives and trainings. And this is because they might not have skills or exposure, and and they're doing a little bit of outreach here and there, but not they've not really been able to do it the way the first category scientists are trying to do. And I think the last category of scientists is slightly heterogeneous, in the sense that you have and it's an inactive category, in the sense these are scientists who are not really actively or not doing science outreach at all. And this could be because they don't see any value. And I've come across and I've had interactions with many of those who just don't see any value in science outreach and communication. And then there are some who just don't see or don't have the motivation or incentives to do it, so they don't do it. And I think nobody is even forcing them to do it, so they prefer not to do it. So I think it's really the second category, and I think this category is also fairly big. This category and the second category, I think, the two biggest categories. And I think it's the second and the third category that we need to, I guess, focus on when we talk about interventions, programs, trainings, incentives. And also because we need to have more diverse stories and approaches in science outreach and communication. Otherwise, what tends to happen is that a lot of times science communication is dominated by a few people who are good at it, for various reasons. Inherently, they have better placed, they have, they're more privileged, been to, really good institutions and so on. Also, science communication today is happening mostly in English. So you're typically more fluent in English, you are more comfortable speaking in English. So I think a lot of these reasons, also discourage a lot of scientists. And this is again coming from my own interactions with scientists about science communication and outreach, and particularly those who are somewhere on the fence, and they want to do it but don't know how to do it and where to start and all of that. And I think the reason we need to study the third category is because we need to understand where the lack of motivation or barriers for science communication and outreach are coming from. And, can those be addressed through, say, programs and policies and other things that we're trying to work towards. So I think today I would say there is like a whole spectrum of scientist-led outreach happening. It's definitely a lot more formalized, because I think science communication is slowly getting institutionalized. It's also become a lot more visible because of social media. But I guess the question is it enough? Are we doing enough? What we're doing, is it impactful? Is it effective? And I think these are some of the questions that we might have to think about and discuss when, with respect to the scientist-led outreach. And there are many reasons why they might not be effective, or why we might want more of this to happen. But yeah, we can discuss that in the discussion later on.
Thank you, Sarah. That was really nice of you to lay out the entire spectrum of scientist-driven research. And I'm very happy to hear that overall the trend is positive. So that's great. Let's go to Arnab to hear from the other side. As a scientist who's been doing public engagement from TIFR, how is the public seeing it? Has that experience evolved? Are there any notable trends? Do they want this, I guess?
Sure. So actually, I agree a lot of with what Sarah just said, except that just remember that the hunger in the public for getting authentic, validated information has not changed. That was always there. It is there. It will always be there. And just because we have social media right now doesn't mean that we were not doing outreach, and things were not happening earlier. I mean, right from the first satellite-based experiments to do large-scale outreach in the country, Bharat Vigyan Jatha that happened in the 70s and all. I mean, there has been a lot of outreach that has happened. And I disagree that most of the outreach is in English. I mean, organizations like TNSF in Tamil Nadu, KSSP, Kerala, they've done fantastic outreach over the years in regional languages, and I think we should appreciate that. However, if you look at it institutionally, and this is something which Sarah also points out, the attitudes of institutions, just remember that in India, most of the science is done by government led institutions or institutions with government support, whatever you want to call it. And there has been a difference. So from what I would say, let's say when I started off, when I came back early 2000s, I would say it was reluctant acceptance of a few guys saying that, okay, look, apart from their work in the lab, I'm also going to spend some time going to school and doing stuff. It was reluctant acceptance. Now, you will see that most institutions would have a public outreach or a public engagement committee. It's much more formal. There are mechanisms in place which both from the side of the government, which mandate that institutions do it, and also realization within institutions that if we need to get students who are going to come into our fold, we need to be telling them what we are doing. Otherwise, if we don't tell the public what we are doing, how will we get the next generation of people to want to do things that we are interested in? So that has certainly changed a lot in the last decade or so. And we can just see it by, for example, at TIFR, the programs we do for, say, school kids and something, the amount, the sort of how quickly does something just get oversubscribed, right? That's a very good indicator of how much demand there is for this. Also, how many labs are sort of eager to volunteer to showcase their stuff at an event for the public. Earlier, you had to literally beg people that, please, this is important, you have to do it, something. Now, the number of people at an institute like TIFR, which does basic research, which may not be understandable easily to the person on the street, are still willing to come up with their labs. So I think there has certainly been a positive trend in this. And I would say not at TIFR, I would say, many institutions are perhaps doing much better than we are doing. So it's not that we are some exemplar or something, but I think it's slowly happening. It could, of course, be much better. I'm not saying that it's ideal, but there has been a very positive development.
Thank you. So going from there, I think let's discuss some really innovative approaches that have been taken to take science to the public, in new ways, in better ways. I mean, maybe this one's for Sarah. And I want to request the audience. I see many budding and experienced science communicators and people interested in this. So if you have also heard of such ideas, it'll be fantastic to hear from you in the chat box. So let's hear from Sarah on this.
Yeah, thank you. I just let me know my net is breaking up again. So if there are any issues with my audio and video. And yeah, I think I just wanted to also respond to what Arnab said. I think and I forgot to mention it. In fact, I did mention it in my India Bioscience article about, how today we are not acknowledging the science communication efforts that have been going on even before we started using the term science communication, like I think more formally and institutionally. I think there has been a lot of work that's been done. And I think now, I think science communication has just come into a different avatar. It's just responding to different societal needs and a changing world. I think that's really where we are at. And also changing nature of science. I think what science means for society and what it can do for society and its responsibility to the society. So, but coming back to Mayuri, your question about, what are some initiatives. I think at FAST India, FAST is a fairly new entity, as you probably know. It's barely 2.5 years old. In science communication, what we're trying to do is really create new avenues for scientists to be able to communicate science in their research. And we're trying to do that through the India Science Festival that took place recently at Pune last year. The festival happened in Hyderabad. It's been around for 5 years now. During pandemic, it happened only for 2 years. But the festival actually provides a lot of young scientists, particularly, the opportunity to experiment with communication, formats, engagement formats. And it's not prescriptive. The festival doesn't say that you need to only come and do this, or you must follow this format, but it has to be engaging, it has to be interesting, and they need to also have a good time while they are there. And the India Science Book Fellowship, which was launched last year, again is another opportunity for scientists to be able to write about science and have more commercially published works of science and scientists coming from India. And so these are two, I would say, major initiatives that FAST India has started in the last 2 years, again, to really encourage and nurture the interests that scientists have for communicating their work. And I think what we're also trying to do is look into capacity building. I mean, how do we, also bring in more scientists into the fold of science communication? So we developed a few science communication courses for the Capacity Building Commission of the Government of India, the Karam Yogi scheme, and we developed 2 online courses for them, and they're hosted on IGOT platform, and these can be accessed by any scientist working at any government lab in the country. And these are like primers to science communication and what does it really entail, why should scientists communicate their work, and then also provide them with a framework of how they could go about doing it, and examples and case studies and quizzes and all of that. So we've developed this with the Capacity Building Commission with the hope that we'll be able to really kind of sensitize and encourage more scientists to look at science outreach and communication more favorably. And also through our initiatives like the SciComm Think Labs, we're really trying to think more deeply about science communication and what sort of programs and policies should be set in place to encourage it and to really build a ecosystem for science communication, not just pockets and few bits and pieces, but really kind of build a well-connected science communication and a effective science communication ecosystem in India. But these are just some of the initiatives that I think FAST is doing, and I think grants like the India Bioscience Outreach grants and the India Science grants also help scientists to experiment and to do fun things with the science communication and public engagement, which are not bound by sarkari kind of prescriptions of what science communication is or isn't. So yeah, those are some of the things I can think of, but I'm sure I'll come up with more from India.
I like the shout out to science and art and communicating science using art. There's a comment from Meghna Krishnadas. I think we've been seeing a lot of this, and hopefully we will see a lot more, which is, I think, in the very.
I should have said this in the trends. It's like we've been trying for the last decade, but it's only recently that TIFR has been able to sort of perform at the Kala Ghoda Arts Festival, which is one of the main arts thing. It's not seen as a science thing, seen as an arts thing, but to get so this thing, talking to artists and people who are sort of more traditionally seen in the arts, has been a great collaboration, I think. So I completely agree with what Meghna has written there.
Fantastic. I think that's, if there's anything more you want to add, Arnab, about creative science communication. If not, we'll go to the next theme, which is, as a scientist, I think we have been hearing more and more about the concept of scientific social responsibility. So can you elaborate on why it's crucial, and how can institutes contribute to taking science to the public in some sense?
Okay, so I mean, this is something which is relatively recent. The way they have packaged it as scientific social responsibility, similar to CSR, the corporate social responsibility. There has been, many people have been, so in the West, if you look at it, many grants, you have to provide a sort of summary for the lay public. You can use a percentage of the grant to do outreach, things like this. Here the government is mandating scientific organizations to sort of make sure that they communicate what they are doing to society at large. Now, I think this is obviously important. I mean, this linkage between science and society, especially in the era of technology that we are in. I mean, right from your mobile phone, if you showed it to somebody, my grandmother would probably think it's magic, right? The fact that you can see somebody on the other side of the world. The way generative AI, and is changing the way we do work. So things are happening really fast in the rate of change is phenomenal right now. And unless these institutions make sure that they convey it to their stakeholders, and their stakeholders, of course, since it's publicly funded, the public at large, it's something that should be done. Now, the issue is we have to make sure it doesn't get into tokenism, because what often happens is when the government mandates that you should do something, people will do something just to tick mark that box that yes, we've done something, without really bothering to check whether what they have done is effective at fulfilling the necessity to engage society with the science going on in that respective institution. So I think that is where one has to be very careful. It's very early days. This thing is hardly a couple of years old, so we have to see how institutions take to it. And I think the good thing that's going to happen out of it is that it's going to encourage practicing scientists to communicate science, and it might result in more initiatives, probably with organizations like FAST or whatever. But while there is some amount of, you will always have people who are professional science communicators, right from, say, superstars like Bill Nye, the science guy in the US, and that kind of high profile people, to people who are doing it full time as a job. But it is not a substitute for the very authentic thing of a scientist talking about what he or she does to a larger community. And I think we have to build that into this scientific social responsibility, that we actually encourage scientists. Now, today it's that, given that none of them have been trained to do this, some of them might be particularly really bad. I mean, if they communicate their science, people might decide, we don't want to get into this, right? We don't want that to happen. We don't want that negative thing to go out. So they need to be trained on how to do it. But I think this is a direction which is really good, that it would encourage, institutions would be encouraged to take their science outreach or science public engagement in a much more serious professional manner. Because maybe for the institution, yes, they are ticking that box, but it just should not, much of the CSR just lands up being tokenism. And one should ensure that that doesn't happen. That is my only worry for the scientific social responsibility, that we will say, oh yeah, we did this, we gave 5 lectures over here, and that we are done with it now. So that's not the aim of it. The aim is to actually try and get society to appreciate why we are doing the science we are doing, why is it important, what are we trying to do, it's your money at work, what are we doing with it?
Yeah, very true. And I think that hopefully this is on paper the incentive that was lacking earlier that Sarah mentioned. And now if it's there, that's maybe a positive way in which we can go ahead with this. Great.
Oh, absolutely. Because see, earlier, I can tell you my own experience. If I went to, when I was just joined as a very junior faculty member, if I went and said, I want to do this program at a school somewhere or at a college somewhere, people would say, no, why? I mean, that's not part of our mandate, this thing. Now, at least you can go and say, look, we have this social, scientific social responsibility mandate. We should be doing this. Does Rohit want to say something? Rohit has got his...
सर हिंदी में बात नहीं कर सकते आप?
हाँ, हिंदी में बात कर सकते हैं, बिल्कुल बात कर सकते हैं, क्यों नहीं?
सर हिंदी से थोड़ा समझ नहीं आ रहा, हिंदी में बताइए।
कोई बात नहीं, हम दोनों लैंग्वेजेस में बात करें।
हाँ, मैं हिंदी में।
हाँ, ठीक है, जरूर करेंगे।
So,
समाज
Mayuri,
में
I
हमें
also
जो
wanted
विज्ञान
to...
की...
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
No, please go ahead. No,
I was just giving the one-liner summary in Hindi, but you can go ahead.
Maybe Arnab finished your Hindi summary.
Yeah.
And we can go
Yeah. Finish your summary and then I'll come in.
So, Rohit, मैं जो कह रहा था कि हम वैज्ञानिक संस्थाओं में जो काम करते हैं, उसे समाज में हम कैसे पहुंचाएं और क्यों पहुंचाएं, इसे एक मतलब समर्थन देने के लिए ये जो साइंटिफिक सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी जो आया है सरकार से, ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण होगा। इतना ही मैंने कहना था। पहले क्या था, हम लोग जो लोग हमें बाहर जाना है, कोई स्कूल कॉलेज में जाके हम जो कर रहे हैं उसके बारे में बात करना है, लोग कहते कि नहीं भाई आप लैब में काम करो, ये आपका काम नहीं है। आजकल हम कह सकते हैं कि नहीं, ये साइंटिफिक सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, हमें ये करना चाहिए, और हम जहां पे काम करते हैं, वैज्ञानिक जहां पे काम करते हैं, उन संस्थाओं से उनको समर्थन मिलेगा, यही आशा है हमें।
हाँ सर, अब आ रहा है।
Sarah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I actually just wanted to respond to the CSR question. Sorry, SSR idea. I mean, as an idea, I think SSR is great, and I completely agree with Arnab that we needed something like that to tell, to kind of hold the community accountable to the taxpayer and say that, this is the sort of money that you get received from research, and you have a responsibility to share that knowledge and what you're doing with those funds with the taxpayers, with the citizens. But I guess the SSR document itself is very poorly drafted. So it's so again, the idea is great, but how will the implementation of this look like will be key. And I think we are right now happy with just the fact that there's an idea, and the fact that the science and technology policy, which is still in the draft form, has an entire section on science communication and public engagement. I think we're happy with these two developments, but now I think we're looking at what happens next. And I think the next phase of science outreach communication, be it driven by the institutions, scientists, science communicators, educators, has to be done more intentionally and more thoughtfully and strategically. I think if we are to really make a difference, if we are really out there to make a difference, and again use the funds that we're receiving again from the taxpayers, and a lot of the outreach funds that maybe they will sanction under SSR and other schemes. I mean, those funds also have to be utilized appropriately and effectively. So again, I would like to, I'm really curious to see what happens next, after this announcement, and how we take this forward, the responsibility forward.
So to the best of my knowledge, there was no additional funding that was, they just said, karo. कैसे करो, कहाँ से पैसा आएगा, वो सब भी उसके बारे में, but it's शुरुआत है. There's a starting, it's a starting point. At least somebody has said something that do it, which is itself, I think, a great thing that you should do it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. But the problem is that you do need funds to do good quality science outreach and communication. I'm not saying a lot of funds, but at least some amount of funds are important. And I think it also validates the process and the exercise itself, and gives it legitimacy. And I think under SSR, SERB, I remember, had like a small pot of money that scientists could use for SSR activities, is what I understand. I don't know about the other government grants, whether there is a separate budget that you can apply for SSR, under SSR.
I mean, based on past trends, it's usually, diminishing grant money over the years. So I don't know. I guess it's too soon to say. But
Exactly. Yeah.
we will see. I see a raised hand. Maybe if you can just hold on to your question at the end. Is that okay? Unless it's like a burning question right now.
No. Okay,
Okay.
it's okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Hari Krishna. Okay. Let's move on. Sarah, how, in your experience, can you tell us how active involvement in outreach activities can actually make someone a better scientist? Because you've had a training as a scientist before. Please.
Yeah, I mean, this is always a very difficult question because to answer, because I feel that you realize the importance or the value outreach brings to your, to your personal or professional life only after you do it. At least that's been, my experience. It's difficult to, tell people that you must do it because it helps you in these ways. But I think how I have benefited, and I've shared this story many times during, my postdoctoral research. I was working at a research institution which was primarily funded by philanthropic money, by private, donations. And so we used to interact a lot with philanthropists and, people who have nothing to do with science but are interested in supporting science. And also we were, located in an area which had, which had just us and then just these beach goers and these rich people, in the US. So we also had to really tell the community why we exist and why has the government given us the space to do research, and how are we, really benefiting the larger society. And so I think those interactions as a scientist really made me zoom out of my, the work that I was doing in my lab and really look at my work from that lens. And I'm not saying that even if you're working on a molecular mechanism or something very abstract, you will not see how that fits into the larger scheme of things. I don't think you need to zoom out and try to place it, and you might be able to place it even then. But it gives you that pause. It also, the question and answer with the non-science public, or even with your peers or your, people from other departments and disciplines, can really help you sharpen your thinking about your own research and the directions your research can take. And I think we always underestimate that, back and forth with, or the discussion and the dialogue that you could have. And I think those back and forth and those question and answers, even I used to have with our funders who would come in to understand our work, really helped me sharpen my research ideas and how I could, look at my research. What could be some questions I should be asking and I'm not asking right now. And so I think that it is a great way to also introspect and zoom out and get more perspective, or broaden your perspective about your research. And so it kind of helps you, other than obviously the other advantages of more visibility and this and that, and, professional, how it will help you in your professional life and all of that. But I think on a very deeper level, I think this is, or what I experienced was really the ability to look at your research from a very different point of view, and which really helps you sharpen and make your research better.
Any quick points on that, Arnab, as a practicing scientist? Thank you, Sarah, for that perspective.
No, I completely agree. So one of the things is, if you can simplify what you're doing and explain it to a person not in your field, a lay person, it actually helps you to understand what you're doing better. And I think that is probably the biggest, help that outreach gives you and this is something which pretty much every student I've worked with who is, try to explain their work to, school students or something, in a language that's very simple and non-technical, has said that it actually helped them understand their own work better. So I think that is where it's the most important. So,
very true. This is more like a reflective exercise, and you go back to the drawing board and sort of, maybe you're missing something. Great, very nice. I think this is the last sort of formal question. This one's for Arnab. Can you share any personal anecdotes or experiences where outreach has positively influenced your scientific journey, as you were just saying? So maybe one or two examples would highlight that.
Okay. I mean, clearly several, but see, again, the main part is this realization that there is another, so it's not, so for me, I think the biggest thing is it's not just public as a stakeholder. There's another very important stakeholder who's the people who are funding your work, the administrators, the people who are, in government evaluating you. Yes, there are some technical people, but there are also people who are not technical. They may be political, powers that may be, they may be administrators, whatever. They are also interested in being convinced that, yes, we should spend public money on you. And for that, the outreach experience of being able to explain something, why is the big picture important, why should you support this, has been critical in getting, helping us get support for our own research. And if it was not for the outreach, we would have been just writing the proposal and giving some technical thing and then wondering why they didn't understand what we were saying. So, ये भी बहुत जरूरी है कि जो लोग हमें पैसे देते हैं उनको भी समझना चाहिए कि हम ये क्यों कर रहे हैं, ये क्यों करना जरूरी है. और अगर हम उसे मतलब बिल्कुल आसान सा तरीके से नहीं बता पाएंगे तो हमें ही पैसा नहीं मिलेगा रिसर्च के लिए. So that is why also outreach is important.
Very true. I think we can take questions now from the audience. Thank you so much to all the panelists for the setting up the discussion. Let's start with Hari Krishnan. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello. So, तो मैं अभी एक एस्ट्रोफिजिक्स मास्टर्स कोर्स कर चुका हूँ एंड देन मैंने प्लान किया था कि पीएचडी करूँ. सो इट काइंड ऑफ फेल्ड. अभी तो मैं डिसाइड किया मुझे आउटरीच प्रोग्राम में ही करना है. पहले से इंटरेस्ट था. एक क्वेश्चन मैंने ऑब्जर्व किया जब भी आउटरीच करते समय कि जो भी आउटरीच प्रोग्राम है या फिर जो भी स्कूल्स के लिए मैं कर रहा था वो सब एकदम रिच किड्स और आईसीएसई या फिर एकदम उनके लिए था. सो आई जस्ट वांट टू नो जो नॉर्मल स्कूल्स है उनके लिए कुछ प्रोग्राम्स होते हैं क्या जो इंस्टीट्यूट्स कंडक्ट करते हैं या फिर कुछ, सो दैट नॉर्मल लेवल के स्कूल बच्चों को भी मिले और उनको भी हम बेसिक ट्रेनिंग ले. क्या ये एक्टिवली किया जाता है एंड अगर करना है तो कैसे मैं इसका पार्ट बन सकूं? ऐसे जस्ट आउटरीच एस्ट्रोफिजिक्स
What outreach
because I've seen this
for government schools, rural school programs, etc., etc. So I see Arnab's hand up.
तो हरिकृष्ण, पहले मैं बताना चाहूंगा कि I don't think one should call any school as normal and abnormal. ठीक है? ICSE schools भी normal हैं, government schools भी normal हैं, all schools are normal. अभी आप किनके साथ करेंगे, with whom will you do these programs, where will you do it? A lot depends on who is paying for it. Somebody has to pay for it, right? Now, if you look at a center like TIFR, हमें सरकार से पैसे मिलते हैं, we are funded by the public, hence it is our mandate, it is our duty to go to government schools, go to the smaller schools, we go to rural schools, tribal schools, and we work with them, right? And given that there are only, we are a limited number of people, there are a limited number of programs we can do, we obviously cannot do programs at international schools and, the sort of more hi-fi schools that you are talking about. Now, on the other hand, if you are somebody who depends on the fact that the school has to pay for your program, then clearly you have to go to a school which can afford it, and you will go to one of the better schools. That is absolutely fine. Do not think that, usme kuch like
no, not like that.
But eventually what you can do is also have, and in my experience, last 20 odd years, if you say to one of these sort of schools that, look, I'll do a program in your school, why don't you invite a neighboring school as well? They might be willing, right? So essay you can reach out then to a slightly larger crowd, target crowd, than what is only that school's mandate. Because, you have to play the game. Those schools also want to show कि उनका social responsibility है, and they would want to interact with some other schools, and you're providing them the they don't know how to do it. आपका program से उनका भी वो हो जाएगा. So they are happy to tick that box. So in आपका भी outreach हो जाएगा to, and at the end of it, more people benefit. So it's okay. Just an example.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, CSIR's initiative Jigyasa, I think, is one such initiative. Hari Krishnan, since you were asking about such initiatives, I mean, in my experience and understanding of Indian government institutions, most of their outreach efforts are actually directed towards government-funded schools. Very rarely have I seen, I mean, of course, private schools are part of the larger education ecosystem, so they do come for open days and other activities that institutions organize. But I don't think that institutions prioritize private over government schools. And in fact, a lot of the initiatives I'm aware of that many of the institutions are running are all targeted at government schools. And in fact, CSIR's Jigyasa program, I don't know if there's anyone in the virtual room who's from CSIR, but maybe they can tell you a bit more about this program. And the idea again is to enable the student scientist connect. And they do that by building these institutions build connections with the local schools around the institution, and then they invite the schools over to the institutions. The scientists and students visit the schools, and I think there's a whole program built around that. So I think what maybe you've mentioned is one such example of, you might have come across that, but I think largely, I think at least the government institutions are really working closely with the government schools.
Okay, thank you. I think Rohini had a question earlier. Rohini, could you unmute and ask?
Yes, thanks. So the question is to actually both of you, but I've taken the example of Chai and Why. So how is the impact of such programs with Chai and Why or with Fast India? How do you assess the impact of such programs?
Who wants to go first?
So,
I've
well,
asked this
it's Chai and
question to
Why.
Arnab earlier. I've also
So
got
it's Chai and Why. So let me try and take a shot at it. And I think one of the biggest drawbacks of something which is, let's say, a individual person driven program is that getting proper impact analysis of that remains something which is always, we'll do it later when we can. To me, the way I assess the impact of Chai and Why is, are people still coming for this program? Right? We are in year 16. We have done around 400 sessions. Are people still coming? Do we have speakers willing to conduct sessions on topics which have not been done before? And given that right now we just do not have the bandwidth to often print too many posters, send them out, etc., are people still coming? If people are still coming, it means there is a, if people are willing to wake up on a Sunday morning and come to and listen to science, okay, let's keep doing it. Okay. Now, is there an impact? Well, we have anecdotal stories. Some people write back and say, thanks a lot. I attended your program and I got this, and hence we decided to, do this for our kids, whatever else. But those are one-off things. Those are not impact of a program. So yes, it's something which has to be done. And, I think the amount of data we have over 15 years is something which can easily make a very good project for somebody who wants to analyze all this.
Very good. I think it is very challenging. Of course, let's hear from Sarah about, science festivals and how do you...
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, like you said, it's very challenging to measure impact of public engagement or science communication initiative. It's a very, very important area that we are completely ignoring right now, because we don't know whether what we're doing is working or not. Sometimes you like Arnab is saying, if it's a long running program, then you have enough anecdotes that become that become like a proxy marker for evaluation and impact analysis. And so for festivals, it's only been 2 years since we've been doing it offline. But we've realized that you would need to kind of measure it both quantitatively and qualitatively. I think quantitative measurements will give you a sense of, how the numbers are increasing, the footfall is increasing, how people are engaging with the events, whether they're liking it or not. One key metric we were using, in our analysis was how many students were hearing from a scientist for the first time. And you would be surprised, there was a high number of students or audience who we surveyed said they were hearing from a scientist for the first time, more than I think 60%, 70% of them. So I think those are some of the markers that we use to look at it. So some evaluation will tell you how your event or how your program was, and some would tell you what the impact of it was over a course of time. And I think that course of time analysis is actually the hardest. So what sort of questions should you be asking? What sort of change should you be looking for? And also, how do you measure that sort of change? And so I think devising those questions right at the start will help you measure it over time. And I think that's something that we don't tend to do it. We think of evaluation or when we get asked by a funder, how well is your program working and why should we fund it, is when we suddenly realize that we should have evaluated our work. And I think sometimes it's also a good idea to get external evaluators evaluate your work, because there is obviously a bias when you're evaluating your own work. And so it's a good idea to even have someone else do it for you. And this happens in many other fields. So it's tricky, but I think evaluation has to be thought about at the start of your project. It just makes life easier if you think about it earlier, and what sort of questions and what sort of change you're looking to see. I think in the festival, we've been asking these questions too, about what sort of change are we looking for. I mean, especially if the festival is going to move cities, which I think now it's not. But if it's going to move cities, your questions might change, your data might, look different for each festival, and the sort of larger impact it's making on the ecosystem or the community. So we're looking at questions that are like, are scientists more engaged in science communication? Are we able to engage more scientists to do science communication at the festival? And so so there are different tiers of questions and different segments of people we want to evaluate, and their experiences we want to evaluate, but it has to be like a combination of qualitative and quantitative metrics, and also some proxy metrics. And I think the field is also undergoing a huge change. So it's not just that your one program is going to make that difference. So Science Festival for that reason is also harder. Chai and Wai is also for that reason harder to evaluate, because the whole ecosystem is changing. The public's perceptions are changing. There's so much more happening. So so I think this becomes it just becomes doubly hard. So we have to be realistic about what we are trying to measure and what it means for the program.
Thank you. So basically हम कह रहे हैं कि ये मुश्किल है, this is challenging, right? But we need to keep on thinking of ways to do it, start somewhere and go from there. Great. I'd like to take Shalini Sanyal's question. She's asking a really important question about science reporting and how sometimes stories can be sensationalized or even wrongly presented in media, and whether there's anything that can be done about it, counteracting this. So who would like to, which one of you would like to? Maybe Arnab?
Yeah, okay, why not? So, one thing is that this sensationalism arises because primarily some topics seem to be, iske baare mein to likhna hi chahiye. Typically a satellite launch, some black hole somewhere. I mean, some topics get, I would say, more than their fair share of coverage. And I mean, this is in all media channels. It's not just social media or something. There is also another problem that I find that some, at least print media certainly, tends to cover topics jahan pe we will show that sarkar ne jo kiya hai, wo bahut acha kiya hai. It's a very it's a very sort of could be pro science if you want to call it, but it's not an objective view of how the journalist media should be looking at science. I mean, they should be asking all sorts of questions, और वो सवाल पूछते नहीं हैं. They take it too much at face value, whatever they are given in maybe in a press release or something, और उसी को छाप देते हैं. So this is where I believe that we do need some sort of thinking process on it. I don't know if there is, as Shalini asks, a effective strategy to counteract this. I am the scientist. All I can say is that we need to ensure that the other sort of maybe very boring science, but very important for the country, should also receive some coverage. And एक चीज है, I mean, on social media, it's much easier for people to like, dislike, give comments, give something. So that is a good thing, which, अभी अखबार में कुछ छपती है, you never give any feedback on it, right? So that way, I think social media is good. But we have to see what the balance is, and I don't have a solution. I mean, honestly, I don't know if Sarah does.
This is actually a question that scares me. मुझे इस क्वेश्चन से बहुत डर लगता है. मुझे लगता है कि इस वजह से हमें साइंस कम्युनिकेशन के बारे में एक्चुअली काफी सीरियसली सोचना चाहिए. मतलब सिर्फ ये कि साइंस कम्युनिकेशन करने से हमें बहुत अच्छा लगता है, इट मेक्स अस फील गुड, इट हैज अ फील गुड फैक्टर. I think it has deeper implications, and I think this is what Shalini is, I think, pointing at, especially in today's digital social media world. I think the speed with which information travels, and also what people want to believe in. So I think that scares me a lot more today as someone who's from science, and I don't think there is I don't think there's one answer or one solution for this, but I also see this is where the connectors play a very important role. I think this is where a community of science communicators play a huge role. If you look at the US, there are so many people who are constantly debunking, constantly clarifying, talking about science, even though I think US has its own problem of pseudoscience and vaccine deniers and whatnot and flat earthers. But I think I think we need a stronger science media ecosystem. I think a much stronger, high quality, and this is exactly where the role of science communicators come in, and because scientists don't have the time to constantly be at it and clarify and make videos or be out there engaging. So I think science YouTubers or science communicators on social media, I think these are some of the people who could perhaps help. And if we can build a strong ecosystem around that, I think we can really. And I think other thing is media literacy, starting media literacy and science media literacy early on, perhaps in schools, so that people, kids know what is fake news. And I guess that comes under the broad umbrella of critical thinking, and science education should be about all that. But maybe we can start talking a little bit about media and literacy and how news media wants you to think, the neuroscience of it or whatever. Some elements of that can also be touched upon early on in education, given the speed with which I think digital ecosystem is becoming bigger, and the disinformation and misinformation ecosystem is getting bigger and bigger, and it's becoming political, and it's getting messy. I think some of these approaches might help.
WhatsApp University.
University.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to add to this, and I also see Meghna has asked about these the groups, etc. One thing which I see has helped in the last couple of years that we've been doing this is having a WhatsApp group that connects scientists and journalists. That way, if there is something a journalist wants an authentic piece, wants some criticism of, or something, wants to check their facts, we can quickly connect them to the right person. Conversely, if a scientist has done something and we really want them to get, they want to get, they can put it out, and they can find if there is a journalist willing to take it up. And mostly these are, sort of the more serious journalists who are there, not. I mean, I have a problem. I mean, some of the problems is with these YouTubers who can just go ahead and put out anything they want without being verified. As what is it? Dev Prasad is saying, social media posts are not peer reviewed. And that is a problem. So one thing is, this community of scientists can quickly step in and give tell the journalists or whatever, okay, here you want, okay, it's none of us, but why don't you contact this person there? Somebody's contact is there. So that has really helped people with both with fact checking as well as with coming up with kisko puchun iske bare mein. That's the main thing. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we have 2 more questions, so let's maybe quickly wrap this up. I think one is about the role of AI in science communication. Do we want to do it? Do we not want to do it? Is it worth the risk?
I mean, in a way, the genie is out of the bottle. You have to be really, really careful with this. The problem is that as of today, I don't think that the AI that's out there, at least in terms of both generative AI models, large language models, the chat GPTs and equivalents, or even the stable diffusion in Midjourney and the image wala things, or Copilot for code or whatever else, are reliable enough that at least I would trust them. So while yes, they might be very useful for somebody who's not a good speaker of English to, tighten up a paragraph of you use Quillbot to tighten up a paragraph of your writing. That's perfectly fine. Those kind of usage of AI is of course there. But I'm a bit worried when generative AI comes up and, starts hallucinating and gives you completely wrong inputs, which then influences what people are going to say. So I think one has to be a bit, handled with care.
Okay, maybe we can go to the next one from Chandana Basu. So she's a practicing scientist and she's asking, how can you make your outreach initiative sustainable if you are a scientist and you're not, you don't wish to take this up as a venture independently? How do you balance your science and your outreach, I guess, is the question. Any one of you can go ahead.
Arnab should.
Can I give a very crazy analogy? I mean, it's not the right analogy, I know, but
Hallmark.
It's like, some people have 1 kid, some people have 2 kids. People who have 2 kids love both their kids. They give, they nurture both their kids. And if it's a labor of love, then you somehow manage to do it. Now, yes, it does take up a lot of time, but then, we have 24. So yes, in the long term, of course, I spent more time in lab had I done it. But at the end of it, overall happiness is probably both together, and that's what I've been doing. And I would recommend it for whoever it is. So, love both your babies. So
Okay, great. I think unless there are any more questions, I don't see anything.
I just wanted to add to Chandana's question. I think that's a really good and a very valid question. I just think that those efforts need to be recognized and incentivized appropriately. I mean, of scientists who are doing it out of passion. I mean, even if they're doing it out of passion, this is, I think, where the institutionalizing of science could, I don't know, again, I'm not sure if I should use institutionalizing, but and there needs to be a way of acknowledging, recognizing efforts by scientists in science communication. And I think that can also serve as an incentive for those who might want to take it up but don't have time. And I think a lot of countries they include countries and grants take into account scientists' outreach and public engagement efforts. So I think that would be important to do, is to recognize and acknowledge it as part of your professional, assessment as well.
And also internal, say, promotion metrics, etc.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that I have seen a sea change in what things were when I joined at the lowest rung of the ladder, with what it is now, where the form actually asks you for how many public lectures have you given, have you engaged with radio, or, whatever, all these things. The science outreach and public engagement has actually come into our formal process of evaluating a faculty member in their career progression, which was never there 20 years ago.
Sorry, I would like to add, am I audible?
Yes, Chandana.
Yes, Chandana. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think it is not about time or recognition. I think I mean, I have received in a lot of good response from Indian academia, and I'm grateful for that. I think it is all about, if taking up as a venture, if you do not have that business minded thing, so how to what are the, like, starting of baby steps to take? If you, like, it's overwhelming to think, to I have like got one extension grant and one outreach grant. So, but now when I think of taking it up as a sustainable, which will, like, kind of breed its own. So, but I find it overwhelming to think it of as a business. So I don't know, like, how to go about it. So where can I get a training, or where can I, find a training for that?
I think
Chandana,
maybe
I'm not quite sure. I mean, do you want to try to make this into a business or what?
Yeah, so I mean, I would like to take it further and not lose it in a way, but it's more like a voluntary effort and not like a business kind.
I think maybe
Yeah,
as
so
a
I mean,
fellow extension grant awardee, I can just add something here. Chandana, I think what you're maybe asking is, after the grant money from India Bioscience runs out, what next, right? And so
Yes.
one way might be to approach other partners to show them that, look what you've done with 2 years of support, and this is a worthwhile venture to invest in, and maybe that's the way to go ahead. I would not maybe use the word business necessarily, because I think that's a full-time thing on its own. But we can maybe chat more separately on this later. I think we are on time.
Sure.
So yeah, exactly, Sarah. That's why we need more funding for such activities.
Right, but Chandana, I mean, you're at BHU, right? I mean, doesn't BHU decide that, okay, fine, she got support from India Bioscience, but maybe now it's time for us to step in and it should be our own effort.
No, not really. I mean, I have been talking about
We'll chat about this later. We'll chat about this. I think we are running.
I have
It's
been,
5 o'clock.
So in the sense, like, I've been asking about some sort support, and I have already received support for doing other things, but I think slowly science communication will also come up. I'm hopeful.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Really fantastic discussion. We've explored many avenues today. I hand it back to Arushi.
Yes, thank you so much, Mayuri and Arnab and Sarah, for this great discussion that we've had. I personally understood a lot more than what I imagined public engagement to be. So yeah, nonetheless, just to give you all a heads up, this is not our last huddle. We have one more huddle, which is going to be happening on the 28th of March. So do keep an eye on the website, and the announcements will go live soon. And we hope to see you all again in the last huddle. And once again, on behalf of everybody from here and the India Bioscience team, I would like to thank Mayuri, Arnab, and Sarah, and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.